Hi, everybody. This is Angel with ConfidenceIsCatchy.com. Thanks for tuning in today to our sponsor segment for the My Confidence Challenge. Today, I have our sponsor, Karen Anderson, who is an author and a writer and just an all-around fabulous person. So welcome, Karen.
Hi.
We're so excited to have you as a sponsor on our challenge. And this week's challenge was based on some ideas that came from your book. So tell us a little bit about your book and what you've been doing and kind of what you're going into now.
So it's interesting because as someone who has struggled with confidence my whole life, I recognized at some point that confidence is something that we learn from our mothers, our teachers, our parents, our family, and that lack of confidence sometimes comes from, we sometimes think that it comes from like, oh, somebody said something to us, our mother said something to us that made us not confident. But what I've recognized is that it often is what's modeled. And if our mothers weren't confident, then we sort of pick that up. So, all of that to say that I have been exploring as a writer from about 2009, I've been exploring the idea of self-acceptance with confidence is obviously a big part of the overall concept of what self-acceptance is. And so my writing explores self-acceptance. Oftentimes I do it through storytelling. And then several years ago, I thought it would be a good idea to become a life coach. Mm-hmm. And it was a good idea.
Good idea at the time, yeah.
It was a great idea at the time. And
lots of people were doing it.
Yeah, lots of people were doing it. And I learned so much about myself. And what was interesting is that in the process of doing that, and then also getting a master coach certification, I did a project in which all of my mother's stuff started coming up. And I was sort of like, I knew that I had some issues, but it wasn't until then that it like sort of became very obvious that this is something I need to work through. And so as I kind of mixed that up a little bit, but I started doing this project that would end up being the sort of the test, or not the test, but it's like if you do a project, and that's when you complete the project, you get your master coach certification. Mm-hmm. So my project was a 6-week program that I created for daughters who struggled in their relationship with their mothers, and the bones of that program ended up becoming a book that I published actually almost 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. And that book was called The Peaceful Daughter's Guide to Separating from a Difficult Mother. Mm-hmm. And in the past 4 years, I sort of recognized that coaching was not my favorite thing to do, and that writing was. And the success of The Peaceful Daughter's Guide was showing me that that's more of what I want to be doing more of that. Mm-hmm. And I would get lots and lots of questions. And so, I write a newsletter. And as you've mentioned, I have a Patreon page where I answer these questions. And I also debut a lot of the writing that I do. But so about 1.5 years ago, I recognized that because that book had done so well, and because I had done so much writing in the past 4.5 years, I thought, maybe I could revise and expand the book, make it better with some of the things that I've learned in the past few years. And it was like very serendipitous. I went to a writing retreat, met a woman who is a literary agent, told her about how I wanted to redo the book and that I was planning on self-publishing it. And she said, oh, no. She said, based on the success.
Let me get that first.
She's like, I think, we can get you a traditional book deal. And I'm like, okay. So yeah, that was like almost, I even can't remember now. But so anyway, all of that. Fast forward to this past March, and this book is the result of all of that. So this is basically a revised, expanded, better book than the Peaceful Daughters Guide. And as I said, it came out in March, and um, yeah, it's been a great journey, and I'm I'm working on more writing. I'm sort of moving. I guess I'll never move out completely out of self help, especially in regards to the writing that I do on Patreon and in my newsletter. But yeah, the next book is more about. Actually, I can show you a picture.
She's working on it. I love it.
Yeah, these women right here. So it's basically an exploration of my maternal lineage.
Yep.
And this is a picture of my grandmother, and it's her high school graduation. I want to say it might have been around 1936, 1937.
Yep.
And this is my mom and her high school graduation.
Yep.
And that was 1958. And then this is me. This is my high school graduation in 1980.
Wow. Yep.
And a lot of the writing that I've been doing is exploring the decisions that these three young women made in the 5 years after these photos were taken.
Yep.
And how that impacted their lives and ultimately my life. And just about sort of some of the decisions that women make, oftentimes not even realizing that they are decisions, because they feel like things are just etched in stone. And what's interesting is that the exploring who those women are and were has helped me understand that oftentimes a difficult mother, right, is the result of those unconscious decisions that they made in a system that doesn't value women equally.
Right.
And so when an adult daughter is struggling in her relationship with her mother, I'll never be one to advocate that a woman tries to make nice or tries to have a relationship with a mother who is abusive or in any way. A lot of times people use the word toxic, but it's not necessarily about, oh, I'm gonna now have this wonderful relationship with my mother. But it's great to be able to have an understanding that sometimes the pressures that women faced and the the misogyny, all of those things are what they're sort of forged that difficultness that made them unable to be the mothers that we wanted them to be.
Right.
So having that understanding can be very, very helpful. And that's why I'm doing this kind of exploration work. And I have found that telling the stories of these women has been very empowering for me and for others.
Yeah, I can see that. In the group, we had posed a challenge of some of the questions, these same types of questions that you're asking yourself. We asked some of the people in the challenge group, and I know one person said so far this has probably been the most difficult challenge because they really had to face some stuff that was passed down, generation to generation that, when she looked at it, went, wow, that doesn't resonate, or my mom didn't project that the way she told me to be. So what she was saying and what she was being were two different things, and that was hard for her to recognize that and to see that, so distinctly. And it's almost always in retrospect. We don't always see it, as it's happening, but definitely when you sit back and look at it from that angle, you go, wow, okay, yeah, there isn't always a congruence between those two things. And when you start to hear the history of what your mother went through, I know I've heard a lot about what my mom went through when she was my age and or before that. And you start realizing, well, okay, well, that would explain that, and that would explain this. And that who they are is forged by what they went through, just like who we are is forged by what we went through. And we sometimes forget that. So.
Yeah. And, I mean, there is no such thing as a perfect mother. I mean, we know that, and we often, I see a lot of women sort of bouncing in between saying things like, oh, well, she did the best she could. And that's true. Maybe she didn't do the best she could, but,
maybe not. That's okay.
But the other thing I think a lot of women don't want to do or say, because I'm a big fan of what I call the both and, which is, yes, she did the best she could, and I suffered at her hand. Mm-hmm. And both things are true, and it's okay, and I can have compassion for all of it, mm-hmm. right? And I think a lot of times feeling compassion can be scary, because we think that if we have that compassion, that we will give up boundaries we've had. Right. And the more I practice the work that I do, I'm finding that you can have really excellent, healthy boundaries can only come when you have compassion. But as I said, a lot of women, and myself included, used to think that if I feel love or any of those kinds of feelings from my mother, then she'll steamroll me. Right. So yeah. So anyway, it's and like the person, I saw the comment that you're talking about, and I don't know. I like to believe that it doesn't have to be scary, hard work. It can be like the most life-affirming thing you can do.
Right. Well, just let's go of a lot of stuff that you're carrying that you don't even realize you're carrying.
Yeah.
Just let you get through it and move over, move on from it so that it's, conscious. And that's everything we do in My Confidence Challenge, is to get conscious about what it is that is going on in this is what I call the soundtrack of the abyss back here.
Yep.
We don't really think about what's driving us. Our confidence comes from within, but then we don't listen to what's happening within. And
right. So, exactly.
Like, okay, well, why don't I have enough confidence? Well, I don't know what's going on back here. What's the operating system working off of? So.
Well, it's interesting because I've discovered lots of operating, thoughts or whatever that I was unconscious to for many years. One of them, and I still think it to this day, but like I recognize that I catch myself in it. I'm like, oh gosh, there it is again.
There it is again, yeah.
It's simple and it's awful, but it's there it is. And I'm pathetic. Isn't that interesting, right?
Yeah, like an interesting, like, where did that soundtrack come from? Where did that sound bite? It's a sound bite. That's all it is. It's something that got lodged in there, and it's like on playback,
And it's funny because I can now like say that, and like, you see me, I'm not triggered by it anymore. Right. I sometimes will catch myself feeling shame or, in a situation where all of a sudden it's like, and I'm like, oh, it's because I'm pathetic is back there still playing in the background.
Right. Yeah. It's chiming in. You're not needed here. Thank you.
And, I find a very, very simple practice for anybody who's watching this is that anytime you find yourself in one of those loops, that sort of shame, pathetic, I'm not worthy loops, mm-hmm. is to just simply take your hands and place them over your heart, and it actually has an effect on on your nervous system. Mm-hmm. Calms the amygdala. That's just a tiny little practice of self-compassion.
Yep.
Well, interrupt it right then and there.
Well, that's what it really is. It's just getting conscious about it and then interrupting that pattern and replacing it with some other pattern.
Yeah.
So whether it's holding your hands over your heart or just having that inner dialogue of, okay, it's okay to think that, but let's try to replace it with something else. And it's all just, getting clear about what messages are floating around back there that we don't even realize are driving us.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because I don't know, sometimes I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be positive all the time. And that in and of itself can then be something that if we don't succeed, we then beat ourselves up over. See, now I can't even be positive all the time. I suck.
Right.
Pathetic.
Right. I'm supposed to be positive and I'm not feeling positive. And so therefore, you just get into this whole spiral. Right.
Yeah. So it's like being able to, hold space for all of it. And that kind of gets into, there's a couple of parts of the book more towards the end that are all about what I call remothering, which is being able to hold the space for our pathetic, shameful selves. And, I sometimes even call it, I just take myself onto my own lap, and I'd be the mother that I wish I'd had, which was when I'm in that sort of prickly, ugly, awful place. I just I hold myself and I say, okay, it's okay to feel this way. And that then makes it pass much more quickly than, oh, you're so stupid because you're feeling pathetic again.
Right. Beating yourself up over something that isn't necessary to beat yourself up over. Yeah, we do that a lot. We all do that far too much. So.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being our sponsor and for your wonderful book. And tell people the best place to find you. Where should they go?
Well, I guess my website, which is kclanderson.com. And there you can sign up to be on my newsletter. You can read my blog. You can also access the link to Patreon, which I know we keep talking about that. And Patreon is a place that's, as I said, it's where I debut all of my writing. So if you're interested in, if you love my writing and want to support me as a writer, you can do that for as little as $2 a month. You can ask me questions there and I answer and give advice and
it's a really nice place. I checked that out, and why not? We spend $2 a day on a cup of coffee, right?
And I'll just say, it's sometimes people call it the tip jar for the internet. There's all kinds of people doing interesting things on Patreon, and the way I look at it is, if you like my writing, it's unfiltered, unedited. This is the real deal. It's not some here's 10 tips on how to feel better. It's like, it's the real deal. Right.
Here's the raw footage, so to speak,
Exactly.
Come and tell me what you think. So yeah, it's a great place to find more about you and to get the close-up version as opposed to the marketed version. So
exactly.
The glossy. We don't want the glossy. We want the real Karen. So. Well, thank you for being with us. Thank you for being our sponsor. And we will obviously be seeing how people relate to this challenge on Tuesday on our Takeaway Tuesday segment. So,
and if anybody has any questions, feel free to tag me in a comment and I'd be happy to.
We'll definitely be tagging you in some comments for sure. Okay. Thanks so much for being with us. And I'll see you on Tuesday.
Thanks. Bye.